On my 70th birthday, my son stood on the stage with a smile so sweet it could fool the angels. Everyone clapped. Everyone adored him. Everyone believed he was the perfect child. Everyone except me. And when he said his last words that cut through me like a knife dipped in ice, I pushed my chair back, stood up in front of all the guests, and walked out of my own birthday party. People gasped. Someone dropped a glass. My son froze. But I didn't look back. I couldn't. Because if I had, I might have done something far worse. Before I tell you what he said, and why those words shattered 70 long years of my life, tell me the time and the country you're watching from. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Margaret Steele, born in 1955 in a tiny town in Ohio. I wasn't always the woman who walked out of her own birthday party. No. I used to be the kind of woman who stayed, the kind who tried, the kind who gave and gave until there was nothing left but a tired smile and shaking hands. I believed in kindness. I taught my children that kindness was like a seed. Plant enough of it, and you'd grow a garden. But life, I learned, doesn't always give back what you plant. The story begins many years before the birthday disaster, back when my son Daniel was only 7 years old. He had big blue eyes, a soft voice, and a habit of holding my hand whenever he got scared. Back then, he was gentle, kind, loving. Or at least, that's what I wanted to believe. The first low moment came on a rainy afternoon. I was in the kitchen making grilled cheese sandwiches when the school called. They said Daniel had pushed a boy off the swing. When I asked him why he did it, he whispered, "Because he sat where I always sit." I told myself it was just a child's mistake. Children make mistakes. But then came the next incident, and the next, and the next. One afternoon, I found our neighbor's kitten crying under the porch. It had a cut on its paw. When I asked what happened, Daniel said, "I just wanted to see if it would scream." He said it like he was telling me the weather, plain, simple, empty. That was the first time I felt fear toward my own child. But I hid that fear. I shouldn't have. God knows I shouldn't have. Still, life wasn't only filled with lows. There were highs, too. Moments when Daniel would surprise me with a drawing he made of the two of us holding hands, or when he would sit beside me on the couch, resting his little head on my shoulder, asking me to read him a story. I held on to those good moments like a drowning woman holds on to driftwood. Years passed. Daniel grew. And so did the coldness inside him. When he was 14, something extreme happened. It was a winter night, snow piling up like soft ghosts outside, and I heard a scream from the garage, a real scream, not a kitten, not a boy on a swing, a grown man. I ran out and found an older teen from the neighborhood, Kyle Benson, lying on the floor holding his arm. Daniel stood over him, face blank, a metal rod in his hand. "He was bullying me," Daniel said, but the look on Kyle's face told a different story. That night, the police came. And that night, for the first time, I saw my son smile in a way that made my skin crawl. But I protected him. I lied. I said Kyle slipped. I said Daniel wasn't involved. I thought I was saving him. I didn't know I was raising a storm that would one day swallow me whole. After that winter incident, life calmed down. Or maybe I just convinced myself it did. Daniel grew quieter, smarter, better at hiding the sharp edges inside him. He graduated high school, went to college, became a well-respected lawyer. People loved him, his charm, his intelligence, his calm smile. But I knew something was wrong. I always knew. The less extreme moments came like soft waves between the storms. He would buy me gifts, call to check on me, take me to dinner, make me feel like maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay. But deep in my heart, the truth lived like a shadow. You can't outrun a storm forever. Time passed. I grew older, my hair turned white, my hands wrinkled like old paper. But the one thing that didn't change was the weight inside me, the fear of what my son truly was. Then came my 70th birthday. A huge celebration, the biggest I ever had. Family, friends, neighbors, music, balloons, laughter. And Daniel, my only son, walked up to the stage to give his speech. I thought, just for a moment, that maybe he would finally say something kind, something real, something from the heart. But what he said instead, what he said in those last words, ruined everything. I won't reveal his words yet, not now, not until the moment is right. But I will tell you this. When he finished speaking, something inside me snapped. Not gently, not slowly, snapped, like a dry twig under a heavy boot. And I stood up, in front of everyone, heart beating like thunder, hands shaking, eyes burning. I walked out, people whispering. Daniel staring at me like I was the one who did something wrong, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Because the real story, the truth I've hidden for 70 long years, was boiling to the surface, ready to explode. And as I stepped out of that hall into the cold night air, I realized this was not the end. This was the beginning of my revenge. And just as I reached the door of my car, something extreme happened. I heard footsteps behind me, fast, heavy, running. Then a voice I hadn't heard in decades whispered, "Margaret, we need to talk. It's about Daniel." I froze. My heart stopped. Because that voice belonged to someone who was supposed to be dead. The moment I heard that voice, deep, rough, and dusted with the sound of old pain, my legs nearly gave way beneath me. For a second, I didn't know if it was a memory, a ghost, or my mind finally cracking after 70 years of holding too much inside. But when I turned, he was standing there, breathing, alive. Thomas Walker, the man who vanished 38 years ago, the man who was never supposed to come back, the man whose disappearance changed everything. "Thomas," I whispered, my voice shaking like a loose window in a storm. He stepped closer, the yellow street lamp exposing the lines on his face. Deep, tired, carved by time and secrets. His once black hair was now gray at the temples. His eyes, still sharp, still watching everything, still filled with fear. Fear of what? Fear of who? "Margaret," he said quietly, glancing toward the banquet hall doors as if someone might rush out at any moment. "We don't have long. You need to know something. It's about your son." My heart pounded like a drum in my ears. Daniel. Even saying his name in my mind felt dangerous. Before I could speak, Thomas grabbed my arm, not roughly but urgently, and guided me farther away from the hall, away from the music, away from the people. We stopped near the back parking lot where only 3 cars were parked, lonely and silent like abandoned toys. "Thomas," I said again, this time louder, steadier, "you're supposed to be dead." His jaw clenched. "I know." "Where have you been?" I asked, though part of me wasn't sure I wanted the answer. "Hiding," he said, "because of Daniel." The cold wind hit my face, but the cold inside me was worse. "What about him?" I whispered. Thomas looked around again, making sure no one was listening. His chest rose and fell. Then, in a voice that trembled with the weight of years, he said, "He tried to kill me, Margaret." My breath caught. The world seemed to tilt. No, no. I told myself it wasn't possible, even after everything Daniel had done, even after all the signs I ignored, even after every dark moment. I didn't want to believe he would go that far. But Thomas wasn't finished. "He was 19, Thomas said. "He knew what he was doing, and he almost succeeded." The night suddenly felt colder, like winter had rushed in all at once. My hands shook. "But why? Why would he do that?" Thomas exhaled slowly, eyes locked on mine. "Because he found out the truth, Margaret, the truth about me." A tension pulled tightly across my chest. I knew what he meant. I knew exactly what he meant. And that secret, buried so deep I pretended it no longer existed, was pushing its way back to the surface. Thomas stepped closer. "He knows I'm his real father." My knees buckled. I grabbed the side of my car to steady myself. All the years, all the lies, all the silence. The truth was choking its way into the open. Thomas placed a hand on my shoulder, and the moment he found out, he wanted me gone. The wind howled across the empty lot. My heartbeat was loud enough to echo. "But Thomas, how did you survive?" I asked. He looked away, eyes shadowed by memories. "I ran. I didn't have a choice. And after what he did, after what he said, I couldn't come back. Not until now." "What did he say?" I whispered. Thomas's lips pressed into a thin, trembling line. "He said he would finish what he started if I ever returned, and that if I loved my life, I should disappear forever." For a long moment, we stood in silence, 2 old souls surrounded by a darkness that felt like it had been waiting for us. Then Thomas looked me in the eyes again. "Margaret, what did he say in that speech tonight? What made you walk out?" His question sliced straight into the wound still bleeding inside me, but I wasn't ready to speak yet. Not about that. Not about the words Daniel used like weapons. Not about the part of the speech that broke me. Instead, I took a deep breath and asked the only question my brain could form. Why did you come back now? Thomas rubbed a hand over his face. Because Daniel's planning something big, something dangerous, and I'm the only one who knows what he's capable of when he feels threatened. I felt my heartbeat stumble. Threatened by what? By the truth, he said. That word again, truth. It kept circling us like a hawk. Thomas continued, I think he knows I didn't die. Someone must have seen me. Or maybe he heard a rumor, but Margaret, your son is looking for me. But why? I asked. After all these years, why now? Because, Thomas said, swallowing hard. He wants to erase everything that could ruin him. The silence that followed was heavy. Then he added, voice low, and that includes you. My stomach twisted. Me? Thomas nodded. You know too much. Daniel, he's not the little boy you raised anymore. He hasn't been for a long time. You saw the signs. You felt the danger. You protected him, covered for him, even lied for him. He paused. But now, Margaret, you're not his mother. Not in his eyes. You're a threat. I shook my head slowly. No, he wouldn't hurt me. Thomas's stare didn't waver. He already did. I blinked. What do you mean? What were his last words in that speech? He asked again. I opened my mouth, but the memory was too sharp, too painful. The hall, the applause, Daniel's smile, and then those words. I shut my eyes. Thomas took a step closer. Margaret, if you're going to survive whatever Daniel's planning, you need to tell me what he said. Before I could answer, a sudden slam echoed across the parking lot. A car door. Fast, hard, too close. We both froze. Then we heard footsteps. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Thomas swallowed hard. He's here. My heart jumped into my throat. Daniel? Thomas shook his head once. No, someone else. The footsteps came closer, echoing in the still air. A tall figure appeared at the corner of the building. My breath caught. It wasn't Daniel. It was Sheriff McAllister, the same sheriff who took the report when Thomas vanished 38 years ago, the same sheriff who told me he likely died in the woods, the same sheriff who swore he would handle everything. His face was harder now, older, but his eyes were the same, cold, unreadable, dangerous. Evening, Margaret, Sheriff McAllister said, tipping his hat just slightly. Didn't expect to find you out here. His gaze shifted to Thomas, and I definitely didn't expect to find him alive. Thomas tensed. Ray, stay out of this. No, the sheriff said, reaching into his coat. You shouldn't have come back, Tom. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? I asked, stepping between them. Sheriff McAllister shook his head slowly. You shouldn't be talking to him, Margaret. Not tonight, not ever. He took another step forward, and then another. Because Daniel wants him gone, the sheriff said, and I promised I'd take care of it. Before I could react, before I could scream, before I could even move, the sheriff pulled a gun from his coat. I gasped. Thomas stepped backward. The sheriff raised the gun, eyes locked on his target, and just as he pulled the trigger, the world erupted. A blast of sound, a flash of light, a scream, metal scraping on gravel, pain exploding in the air. I stumbled back, covering my ears. The bullet fired. But it didn't hit Thomas. It hit someone else. Someone who had just stepped out of the shadows behind him. Someone I never expected to see at my birthday party. And when that person fell to the ground, blood spreading fast, I realized everything was about to get much, much worse. The scream that tore through the parking lot felt too real, too sharp, too full of sudden pain to belong to anyone except someone innocent. For a moment, the world froze. Thomas stared in horror. The sheriff lowered his gun, eyes wide as if even he didn't expect things to go wrong so quickly. My breath caught in my throat as the figure hit the ground, hard, like a sack of bricks. I rushed forward before my mind even processed who it was. My knees hit the cold gravel, sending a shock up my legs. The smell of blood filled the air, metallic and warm. And when I turned the person's face toward me, my heart shattered. Lily? I whispered, voice breaking. It was my granddaughter, Daniel's daughter. 17, bright, gentle. The only one in Daniel's family who still looked at me like I was something soft and human. And now she lay bleeding on the pavement, hit by a bullet that was meant for someone else. Her breathing was shallow. Her fingers twitched. Her eyes fluttered open, confused, scared, and somehow apologetic. "Grandma," she whispered. I held her tight. I'm here, baby. Stay with me." Thomas crouched beside us, pressing his hands over the wound on her shoulder. "The bullet went through. It's bleeding bad, but she's alive. Margaret, keep her talking." Sheriff McAllister stood frozen in place, the gun still dangling from his hand, shock twisting his face. I didn't see her. She came from behind. I didn't drop the gun, Ray," Thomas growled. But the sheriff didn't move. Instead, his eyes darted toward the hall, toward Daniel. Then something changed in his expression. A flicker of fear. A realization. "No," he muttered, shaking his head. No. Daniel didn't say anything about the girl being here, and this wasn't supposed to—" "Drop the gun," Thomas roared. This time the sheriff obeyed, letting it clatter to the ground. Blood pooled beneath Lily. My hands were shaking so badly I barely held her still. Her face was pale as moonlight. "Grandma," she whispered again, I was looking for you." A sob punched its way out of my chest. "You shouldn't have come outside. I saw Dad follow you earlier. He looked angry." Her voice trembled. I got worried. Thomas and I exchanged a sharp look. So Lily had been watching, meaning Daniel might have seen her, meaning he might know she knew something. "Stay awake, sweetheart," I said, brushing her hair from her face. "I need you to stay with me." Her eyes rolled slightly. No. Thomas tore off his jacket and pressed it harder against the wound. "We need to get her to a hospital. Now." "She won't make it if we wait," I said, voice cracking. Thomas looked at me, at Lily, at the blood. His jaw tightened. "Help me lift her." But as we started to move Lily, the banquet hall door burst open and Daniel walked out. His expression wasn't fear, it wasn't concern, it wasn't even confusion. It was cold, quiet, calculating. His eyes slid over Lily's bleeding body like she was a misplaced item, not a person. Then he looked at Thomas and then at me. A slow smile spread across his face. "Well," Daniel said, voice smooth and unshaken, "isn't this interesting?" I stood up, fists clenched, shielding Lily behind me. "Stay away from her." Daniel tilted his head. "Mom, what did you think was going to happen tonight?" "Not this," I snapped. "Not my granddaughter being shot because of you." "Because of me?" Daniel chuckled softly. "Mother, please, if anything, this is your fault. You're the one who keeps dragging ghosts out of the past." Thomas moved in front of me. "Daniel, you crossed a line." "No," Daniel said, stepping closer. "You crossed the line when you came back. You should have stayed dead." His words sent a chill through my bones. Lily groaned in pain, and Daniel glanced down at her again, expression unchanged. "Sheriff," Daniel said calmly, never taking his eyes off us, "pick up the gun." My heart stopped. Sheriff McAllister stiffened. "Daniel, I didn't mean to shoot the girl. I swear." "Pick up the gun." The sheriff hesitated. Thomas stepped toward the sheriff, voice low and dangerous. "Ray, don't you dare!" But then With trembling hands, Sheriff McAllister bent down and picked up the gun again. "No!" I cried. "Ray, she's a child. She needs help." The sheriff's face twisted, eyes wet, but his hands did not lower. "Daniel!" he begged, voice cracking. "This is wrong." Daniel shrugged. "Fix it, or I'll fix you." Everything inside me went cold. This wasn't a man giving orders. This was a man who had been waiting years to reveal what he truly was. The situation spiraled faster and faster, like a storm pulling everything into its center. Thomas stepped forward. "Ray, listen to me. Put the gun down. I swear, if you hurt anyone else, You'll what?" Daniel interrupted smoothly. The world seemed to tilt. "Let me guess," Daniel continued, smiling slightly. "Mother finally told you what I said in my speech tonight? Or she still hasn't?" He looked at me then. "Should I repeat it?" I felt sick. The humiliation of his words, the cruelty, the betrayal. But before he could continue, Lily made a soft, choking sound. "Grandma," she whispered, "I'm cold." Thomas knelt back down. "She's losing too much blood. If we don't leave now." Daniel raised his hand, just a small gesture, but the sheriff immediately pointed the gun at Thomas. "No one leaves," Daniel said gently. "Not until we're done here." My voice shook, but I forced the words out. "What do you want?" He stepped closer to me, lowering his voice so only I could hear. You shouldn't have walked out during my speech." "That's why you're doing this?" I whispered. "Because I embarrassed you?" His jaw tightened. "You didn't embarrass me. You challenged me. In front of everyone. In front of people who need to see me as perfect, and now—" He glanced at Thomas. "Now, the man who should have stayed dead is standing here with a story that could ruin me." "You're a monster," I said. Daniel smirked. "A monster you raised." The words cut deep. Before I could speak, tires screeched loudly from somewhere behind the building. All of us turned. Headlights flashed through the trees. A car rushed into view, fast, too fast. It skidded into the parking lot, engine roaring, gravel flying. Daniel's eyes widened, not in fear but in irritation. "Who now?" he muttered. The car came to a stop so suddenly the back wheels lifted a little. The driver's door swung open, and out stepped Martha Jennings, my late daughter's best friend, a woman I hadn't seen in 10 years. A woman who once promised she would never get involved with the Steele family again. She looked furious, her face red, her hair tied back, her breath shaking, and both her hands holding a baseball bat. "Martha?" I gasped. She pointed the bat at Daniel. "You stay away from them." Daniel laughed. "Oh, this just keeps getting better." But Martha wasn't joking. She charged at Daniel with the bat raised. The sheriff panicked. Thomas lunged. Lily screamed. I felt my body freeze, and then the bat connected with something. Not Daniel, not Thomas, not the sheriff, but the gas pump next to Daniel's car. A loud, sharp clank echoed through the lot. Gasoline sprayed from the broken valve. Everywhere, covering the ground, the cars, the air. Time slowed. The smell hit first. Strong, choking, dangerous. Thomas grabbed my arm. "Margaret, we have to move, now." Daniel stumbled backwards, slipping in the spreading gasoline, eyes wide in sudden shock, and then someone's phone dropped, hit the pavement, and sparked. Just one spark, one tiny deadly spark. The puddle of gasoline ignited instantly. A wave of fire erupted, bright, blinding, roaring, rushing across the ground like a wild animal unleashed. I screamed. Thomas pulled me close. The sheriff stumbled back, terrified. Martha fell to the ground, dropping her bat. And Daniel was caught in the middle of the explosion. The flames surrounded him, swallowed him, lit the night sky with a fiery glow. His scream echoed through the parking lot, a sound none of us would ever forget. And as the fire raged higher and higher, the truth finally struck me. This wasn't the end of the storm. This was only the beginning. Fire swallowed the night. The blast from the gas pump lit the parking lot with a violent orange roar, heat slamming into my face like a wall. For one terrible second, I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. It felt like the world tilted, shaking under the weight of everything happening at once. Daniel's scream cut through the air. Raw, animal, terrified. Thomas yanked me back. Just as a second burst of flames shot upward, sparks raining across the cars. "Margaret, move!" he shouted, pulling me behind one of the cement pillars near the entrance of the banquet hall. I stumbled, my legs weak from shock. Behind us, Martha hit the ground coughing, her hands over her head as fire rolled past her in a wave. Sheriff McAllister dropped his gun and scrambled backward, the flames reflecting in his wide, panicked eyes. Lily lay on the ground, gasping faintly, the fire creeping dangerously close to where she was bleeding. Thomas swore under his breath and darted back toward her. "Thomas, no!" I cried, but he went anyway, covering his face with his jacket, running straight into the smoke. The fire crackled louder, the gas pump hissing like an angry beast. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it would crack my ribs. Within seconds, Thomas emerged again, carrying Lily in his arms. Her head rested against his shoulder, her eyes half open, her lips trembling from pain and shock. "Stay with us, sweetheart," he whispered to her, voice trembling. The sheriff scrambled over. "The fire department is on their way," I called. Oh, God, Daniel." He stopped when he looked at me. His mouth fell open in horror. I didn't want to look. I really didn't, but my eyes lifted anyway, pulled by a force I couldn't fight. Daniel was still alive. Alive, but on fire. He rolled on the ground, screaming, clawing at his clothes as the flames consumed him. His hands grabbed at the air as if begging the night itself for mercy. His face contorted in agony, the flames dancing along the fuel-soaked pavement. "Help me!" he shrieked. His voice didn't even sound human anymore. I staggered forward, instinct pulling me toward the child I had once held in my arms, even if that child had grown into a man capable of unspeakable things. But Thomas caught my arm. "Margaret, stop. You can't save him." I have to." My voice broke. He's still my son. Thomas tightened his grip. And Lily is your granddaughter. She needs you alive. He made his choices. You can't run into fire for a man who tried to destroy you. The truth in his words hit harder than the heat. The flames roared louder, engulfing Daniel's body completely, until all I could see was a writhing shape in the fire, screaming and sobbing and beating the pavement with blazing fists. Martha sobbed from where she was kneeling. "Oh, God, what have I done? What have I done?" The sheriff staggered back, terror twisting his face. "This wasn't supposed to happen. He said he only wanted to scare her. He said. A loud boom exploded from the gas pump as another tank ruptured, sending a shockwave that knocked us all off our feet. The heat burned my skin. My ears rang. My body trembled. For a moment, everything faded into darkness. When my vision returned, Thomas was kneeling over me, shaking my shoulder gently. "Margaret, are you okay? Can you hear me?" I blinked slowly, my head throbbing. The world felt distant, like I was floating inside it instead of living in it. Smoke stung my eyes, and my throat burned when I swallowed. "Lily?" I whispered. "She's alive," Thomas said, voice firm. "In pain, but alive. I already stopped the bleeding as much as I could." Relief washed through me so hard I nearly sobbed. But then I heard another sound, a wet coughing, a dragging, sizzling kind of sound, and when I turned my head, Daniel was crawling. Burned, smoking, barely recognizable, but alive. He dragged himself away from the flames inch by inch, his hands blistered, his clothes mostly burned away. His skin was raw and red, patches charred black. Every movement made him gasp, cry, whimper. I covered my mouth with a shaky hand. "Jesus," Thomas whispered. "He's still—" Daniel lifted his head. His eyes found mine. But they weren't the eyes of a man. They were wild, empty, dangerous. "Mother," he croaked, voice scorched and cracking. "Help! Me!" My heart cracked into 1,000 pieces, not because of compassion, but because even now, even in this state, there was no regret in his eyes. No apology, no humanity, only a burning hatred, hotter than the fire that had almost killed him. "Please," he whispered. For a brief second, I thought this was the moment he would change, the moment something soft would break through the monster he had always been. But then he spoke again. "Get over here, before I kill you." Thomas cursed under his breath. He's delirious. He doesn't even know what he's saying. But he did. He knew exactly. Daniel forced himself up on his elbows, shaking violently. "This isn't over." His voice scraped like gravel. "You think fire can stop me?" My blood ran cold. Sheriff McAllister stumbled back, terrified. He's still trying to threaten her after all this?" A shadow crossed Thomas's face, anger, grief, disbelief. "Margaret, I don't think there's anything left of the boy you raised. This is who he is now." "But he's still alive," I whispered. "And Lily might not be if we stay here," Thomas replied, nodding toward the girl, trembling in his arms. "We need to get her away from the smoke, away from him." Before we could move, Daniel's hand shot out, grabbing the sheriff's ankle. Ray screamed, fell, his hat flying off. Daniel dug his burnt fingers into Ray's skin, pulling himself closer, his voice ripping through the air like a demon crawling out of hell. "You listen to me," Daniel hissed. "You're not going anywhere until you finish what you started." Ray sobbed. "Daniel, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hit your daughter. I swear." "Then fix it," Daniel growled. "Fix everything." Ray shook violently. "How?" Daniel slowly turned his burned, blistered face toward Thomas and toward me, and then he smiled. It was the most horrifying smile I had ever seen. "You know how," Daniel whispered. Thomas stiffened immediately. "No," he said firmly. "No one's dying tonight. No one else." Daniel's grip on the sheriff tightened. "Then do something useful for once in your miserable life." Thomas stepped in front of me protectively. "Margaret, stay behind me." But Daniel wasn't looking at Thomas anymore. His broken, burned body twisted as he lifted a shaking arm, pointing straight at me. "Bring her to me." Every muscle in my body froze. Sheriff McAllister stared at me, his face pale, tears streaking down his cheeks. "Daniel, please, don't do this. Get her." Daniel roared, spit and blood flying from his lips. Ray collapsed into sobs. Thomas lunged forward, grabbing Ray by the collar. "Don't even think about it! Don't you dare touch her!" "Thomas, stop," I whispered. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "Margaret, he is not getting near you. Not now, not ever." But something inside me shifted. Something old, something heavy, something that had been growing for decades. A mother's grief, a mother's failure, a mother's truth. Daniel wasn't going to stop. Not until I ended it. I stepped forward. Thomas immediately blocked me. "Margaret, no. Absolutely not." "He's not going to stop," I said quietly. "You know that. Look at him." But Thomas shook his head. "We can deal with him when the fire department gets here, when the police, real police, take over. This is no longer your burden alone." But he was wrong. It had always been my burden, my son, my mistake, my responsibility. I stepped around Thomas. "Margaret," he hissed, "stop." But I kept walking. The heat of the burning cars scorched my skin as I approached Daniel, who lay half dead, half alive, a creature made of pain and rage. His eyes locked on me, filled with triumph. He thought I was surrendering. He thought he had won. "Mother," he rasped, "I knew you'd come." I knelt down slowly, ignoring the heat, ignoring the pain, ignoring everything except the monster who used to be my child. "You want me?" I whispered. Daniel smirked weakly. "Always." And then I leaned close and whispered into his burned ear, "Then you should never have threatened my granddaughter." His eyes widened. Before he could speak, a pair of hands grabbed my shoulders and yanked me backward. I screamed. Daniel reached for me, and that's when a second explosion ripped through the lot, blasting flames straight toward where Daniel lay. The world went white. Heat slammed into everything. The air shook with a roar louder than thunder. And Daniel, my broken, burning son, was swallowed by fire once more. I stood there, staring at Daniel as he slowly opened his mouth, his face still pale from the shock of seeing me collapse the night before. The room was quiet, filled with a heavy silence that felt too thick to breathe through. The doctor had just stepped out, telling us I was stable, telling everyone not to stress me, but the moment the door closed, Daniel looked at me like a boy who had been hiding something for too many years. His lips trembled. Then he whispered something I had been waiting for my whole life to hear from him, something he had never said, something he should have said long ago, something that made my entire chest tighten. But before the words could fully leave his mouth, the door swung open again and the truth fell back into the shadows. That was how the final chapter of my revenge truly began. If you are watching this, tell me the time and the country you are watching from. The night before, when I fainted, I did not just collapse because of the weight of everything happening around me. No, there was something deeper. Something carved into the story of my life that had been waiting to break open for 70 long years. As I lay in the hospital bed, listening to the soft beeping of the monitor beside me, memories began to spill into my mind like water breaking through an old dam. Memories of kindness, memories of cruelty, memories of mistakes I had tried to bury. But some things still rise, even when buried deep. I thought of who I used to be, a young woman named Margaret Carter, raised in a tiny town where people believed kindness was meant to be both a duty and a weakness. My parents were strict but generous people. They believed in giving to others even when we barely had enough for ourselves. My mother always said, "Kindness is never truly lost, Margaret. It comes back in some form." I used to believe her, until life taught me that sometimes kindness comes back twisted. Sometimes it comes back carrying scars. And sometimes the people you show kindness to eventually become the very reason you lose yourself. When I was 25, I married Daniel's father, Edward, a charming man with a smile that could melt any heart. I thought I had found forever. For a while, everything was gentle, sweet, warm. But warmth can deceive you. Edward changed. His heart changed. And one day I learned something that broke me so deeply that I spent years pretending I was whole. I promised myself I would protect Daniel from everything, especially the truth that had lived in my shadow for decades. But secrets do not die just because we bury them. Sometimes they grow legs. Sometimes they learn how to walk into your life again. And at my 70th birthday, one of my secrets walked right into the ballroom. Breathing, His name was Mark, my stepson, Edward's child with another woman, a child I did not even know existed until he showed up. When he walked into the celebration that day, everything inside me froze. He did not look angry. He did not look apologetic. He looked like someone who had spent years searching for something, maybe a family, maybe answers, maybe a place to belong. And I, foolishly, had thought my revenge only involved Daniel, but suddenly the past had stretched its hands into the present, threatening to pull everything apart. Before I fainted, before the chaos of the night, Mark had pulled Daniel aside. I remembered seeing them whispering. I remembered seeing Daniel's confused face. I remembered feeling the room tilt as I realized the secret was not so hidden after all. And now, in the hospital, as Mark stood in the doorway watching me, I could see it on his face. He knew. Daniel looked from me to Mark, his eyes cloudy with questions. Questions I was not sure I wanted to answer. Questions I was not sure he was ready to hear. He took a breath. Then another. Then he tried again. Mom, I know why you walked out. I know why you were so angry. I know what Dad did. The words hung in the room like smoke. My heart pounded. My palms went cold. This was the moment, one I had feared, chased, and avoided all at the same time. But before I could respond, before I could decide whether to tell the truth or bury it again, a loud crash echoed from the hallway, the sound of something heavy hitting the floor, followed by a scream. The doctor rushed past the door, nurses running behind him. Mark's face went pale. That sounded like... But before he could finish, the power flickered. Once, twice. Then the entire hospital floor went dark, completely dark. Daniel grabbed my arm, panicked. Mom, stay still, do not move. But in that darkness, I heard something, a voice, a familiar voice, whispering my name, Margaret. It was not Daniel, it was not Mark, it was not the nurses. It was a voice from a past I thought I had outrun, a voice I prayed I would never hear again. The lights blinked faintly, but not enough to truly see. Only enough to recognize the shape of a man standing at the far end of the hallway. Old, tall, still. A man who should not have been alive. A man I thought I would never see again. A man who had once promised to destroy everything I loved. My breath caught in my throat. I gripped the bedsheet so tightly my fingers shook, and the silhouette stepped forward just a little, just enough for me to know. My revenge story was not over, not even close. It had only just begun, and this time it would not only involve Daniel, or Mark, or the secret affair from decades ago. This time, the past had come to collect. I swallowed hard, trembling as the darkness swallowed the hallway again, because I knew who that man was, and I knew what he wanted, the real secret, the real reason, the real wound that had shaped my entire life, was about to break open, and nothing would ever be the same again.